Carlos Ramirez, owner of NVS Audio in Roselle, New Jersey. So we got the new Soundstream HdHu 98-13 SG. SG stands for Street Glide. So Soundstream has released the 14 Plus, the 14 SI. So obviously those are the 14 through 23 Street Glide, Road Glide. And now they also released the 98 through 13 RG, which is a Road Glide. And now they finally, after waiting for this radio for like 6 months, they finally released the Street Glide version. I understand why it took longer. The fitment on this unit had to be dead on exact. It was a lot harder to design than the other units because the ignition switch was in the way. They did something that I really like with the head unit. So on the Street Glides, it's a single DIN opening, and then above it you have the blinkers, oil pressure, and the headlight indicators. So in order to fit a nice big size screen, that had to go up and to the side. So this blocked those indicators. They integrated it back into the top of the radio so you didn't lose those functions, and it literally plugs into the factory indicator connector. It's super smooth. You'll see it in the video later on. I really like the way they did that. And it actually looks better than the factory because they made the icons bigger, and obviously they're HD, so it actually looks better than they did on 10-year-old bike. The finish is really good. The only thing that concerned me was the removing of the ignition switch. So removing the ignition switch is kind of tricky, and if you don't line it up correctly, you might not be able to turn the ignition or unlock the handlebars. So you have to be really careful when you take it out to make sure you put it back in right. I recommend ordering an alignment tool just in case, to have it in case it comes out of alignment. You can realign it. But we did it on 3 bikes in the shop today. We fitted this radio on 3 of the 13 and down Street Glides that we had in the shop, and we didn't have any issues with the ignition switch going back together. One thing that we did realize is not all the fairings are the same. So when we put it in the base model Street Glide or Electra Glide Classic, the fairing is basically flat. The reason this is important is there's only like 1/8 of an inch between the ignition switch coming in contact with the screen. So we measured, and on the older one it was completely no issues because the fairing only stuck out. The bezel around the radio where the screen sits flat across only came out 4 mils. So it's only 4 millimeter. We had another bike in the shop and we measured that one. That one came out 8 millimeters. So that actually came in contact with the bottom of the switch. We had to push on the fairing, and while we were pushing in on the fairing, installing the radio, locked the radio in place to give us that 1/16 inch of clearance. And then we tried it on another Street Glide, and this one had 6 mils. So it was 4 mil, 6 mil, and 8 mil. The 6 mil was a tight fit, but we got it on all 3 bikes. So I'm working with Soundstream on this. They might offer a thinner gasket to account for some of the fairings that are a little bit thicker, but we got it on all 3 bikes. The radio, I didn't go too in depth with the features of the radio because the features are exactly the same as the 14 Plus. So it's got Sirius. So the only thing that they added that the 14 Plus doesn't have is they added Sirius XM. So if it's exactly the same as the Road Glide unit, just a different shape. So the 98 through 13 Road Glide unit, Sirius XM, backup camera input. This one, the same thing, Sirius XM input, backup camera input. CarPlay, Android Auto, same amplifier built into the unit, so it's same 4-volt out of the RCAs. Fit and finish is beautiful. Some people don't like the shape of the radio. I think it's awesome, and we only used to offer in my shop the Rockford single DIN as a solution because it's 100% weatherproof, it's easy to use, it works good. Now we have 2 options. We're still going to carry the Rockford, but this is our CarPlay and Android Auto option, and it's only a few $100s more. So if you go with an entry-level single DIN, you're going to spend a couple $100. If you go with the Rockford Aquatic, you're going to spend like $500-600. Now if you go with the Soundstream, you get CarPlay and Android Auto for about $1,000. So I think the extra $400 for a touchscreen, Android Auto, CarPlay, Sirius XM input, backup camera input, I think I see value in that, and I really, really like this head unit. But check out the video. I went over the features as quickly as possible. I tried to keep the video as short as possible, and check it out. Okay, so we have the factory streak light opening. We have the Soundstream Reserve. Leo's gonna slide it in. Stop for a second. So something that I like that they did, in order to get the maximum screen size, they're blocking this indicator, but it's okay because they integrated it into the screen. So it blocks this, but you don't lose the function because they display here. Go ahead and slide in, Leo. Then it's got a gasket on the side, so you gotta rock it back and forth to get it in tight. And then these brackets are gonna give you a hard time, the brackets on the side. So you just have to spread them apart a little bit. We use a flathead screwdriver. Leo's strong as hell, so he's just able to force it to go in between the brackets. I actually had to use a screwdriver, but if you notice, the nubs are lined up. Now, you do have to remove the ignition knob. You're not getting it in there without removing it. And you have to make sure the radio's all the way back. So, I mean, it has to be touching here, and it has to be touching down here, or don't even attempt to put the ignition switch back in. So Leo's gonna pull it all the way back, so it has to be touching right here. If it's not touching, it's not gonna go. And it's gotta be touching down here. Make sure you have somebody help you, so you can pull back on the unit that way, and slide the bolts in the side. Then it's gonna open up the area here, and allow you to put the knob back on. So Leo's gonna go ahead and bolt it in place. And then we're gonna help him by pulling the radio back as he bolts. So it's a 1/4 screws from factory that held the factory radio on the side. So you wanna thread them in by hand. Don't tighten them all the way down, because then you're gonna pull back on the radio to make sure it's tight up against the fairing, and then tighten them. All right, we got Rob pulling back on the radio. Leo's got the 3/16 hex bit. So Rob's holding pressure back. I'm checking the angle to make sure that we get as much clearance as possible. So I'm pushing back on the unit while Rob pulls back and Leo tightens. All right, so the unit's in. It's nice and tight. Now we're gonna go ahead and reinstall the knob. So we're sliding the knob in, making sure it clears the screen. And we're gonna go ahead and snap it into place. Pause it. So we got it in there. It's uncomfortably close to the screen. So we got it in there. It's uncomfortably close to the screen, but it works. Next switch turns. Now we're gonna go ahead and power up. Okay, so they made it cam lock like the other Soundstream radios for the 14 and up. So it doesn't plug directly into the radio. You plug this plug in, lock it in place, then it plugs into this plug. Now, you have to disconnect the display for the blinkers. So you're gonna remove that because this is blocked by the radio screen. Then you got to plug that into the radio connector here, and then it'll make the indicator work on the radio screen. So this plug, this is your antenna, and this is your USB. You have to use this for CarPlay and Android Auto. So they made it so you can either replace your cigarette lighter, which is what we're gonna do, or you can drill a hole in the fairing, and then it has a nylon nut and a waterproof cover. So we're gonna go ahead and remove the factory cigarette lighter and install it there for a nice clean look. And that's it. We should be powered up, ready to go. There she is. Let me grab a iPhone cable so we can show CarPlay. So there we have CarPlay and Android Auto on a 2013 and down. So this works on 98 to 13. This happens to be a 13. Bikes in neutral. There's our oil light. There's our blinkers. Here's our high beam. There's our left and right blinker. There's our neutral, oil pressure, and high beam. Okay, so CarPlay works as it should. There's our Google Maps. There's our Apple Music. There's phone calls. There's the Soundstream main screen. There's the EQ settings. Backup camera setting. FM radio, Android Auto, CarPlay, Bluetooth music, settings. Now I'm not going to go into all these settings because they're exactly the same as the other 14 and up head units from Soundstream for Harleys. So it's literally the same radio, it's just fitted to the 13 and down bikes. So all these, so this is a feature that clients definitely wanted me to check on to make sure it had, and yes, it is Sirius XM. You just have to get the module and plug it into the unit. It's the same module for all the units. There it is right there, SXV300. We're gonna go ahead and plug it in to show you how it works. So it plugs into the back of the head unit right there where it's clearly marked Sirius XM. This is the same on the other units. Literally just pushes in and locks in place. You hear a click, that's it locked in. It can't fall out. Then you just plug your antenna in. Antenna's plugged in. Now you mount the antenna up here. As you can see, the Sirius XM logo lit up. And we have the preview channel.
Now, activate your radio and begin exploring more than 140 channels.
That's simple. That easy.
Sirius XM. Modern mood music. Focus.
Thumb controls automatically work. No separate modules needed. You literally just plug it in. I really like the fit and finish of the unit. I love the fact that they did this. This is great. So they gave us the extra screen size, and then they gave us back the features they took away because the screen blocks the indicator. Just, you couldn't ask for a better job. Some people don't like the way it looks. They say it looks out of place. I think it's a great upgrade for a lower bike. Like, I think it looks good in that dash. The only thing people are going to complain about, I'm 100% sure, is the knob sitting so close to the screen. It's really hard to install it without scratching the screen. It took us a while to get it in there, but it's the only way to do it. There's obviously no other way to do it. Look how meticulous they were with the measurements. It doesn't block any of the gauges, so they gave you the biggest screen size possible without blocking any of the factory gauges. It's just a well thought out unit, and it's a great option for these older bikes. You get CarPlay, Android Auto, 4-volt RCAs, camera input, so if you have a DVR or something has a video in it, you can display it on the screen. It's a ton of great features, Sirius and XM, and it's the same amplifier. It's built into all the other units, so it sounds great. Soundstream did a great job. I ordered a bunch of these because it's a solution. So we have a shop bike that we currently have the Rockford head unit on because that was previously my favorite head unit for these. And obviously I'm going to take it off and install this head unit because it's nice to have CarPlay and Android Auto, especially when you're demoing. So you could easily go through your music. And I like that. So thank you, Soundstream. You did an excellent job. I'm super happy with the head unit. The only negative would be I don't like the fact that you have to remove the switch because it's tricky removing the switch. and sometimes you can't get it back on properly. And then if you don't, and it requires a special alignment key. So if you're gonna remove the switch, I recommend you go online and order the alignment key. It's like 10, 20 bucks on Amazon. Just in case this comes out of alignment, you can use the alignment key to line it back up. If you don't do it that way, and this take out the switch comes out of alignment, you're not gonna be able to use your bike until you get the alignment key. So it's rare that it's happened. It's only happened to us once in the 8 years I've been working on Harleys, but it's nice to have. You should always have it. Even if this install goes smoothly, it's nice to have in case you ever have to remove the ignition switch and need to realign the tumblers inside. But that's just my recommendation. We have the tool in stock at the shop. I actually had, it was Zeus, one of my clients bought it for me. He said you should have this around the shop in case what happens to me happens to you. So I keep it in my toolbox. So it's a recommendation. You don't have to take it if you don't want, but that's my recommendation. You are going to have to remove this switch. There's a YouTube video on how removing the switch. In order to install the radio, it is physically impossible to install the radio without removing this switch. So just know that and be prepared for that. And you're gonna have to mess with the radio and the fairing to get enough clearance. You want, it's like a 16th inch gap between the radio, and if you don't get it in properly, you will not get this knob back in. So just a warning. Everything else is super easy, super smooth, literally plug and play. That's the only difficult part. The fit and finish is really good. I'm super happy with the way this radio looks. Look at that. And yes, it's the same IPX6 bonded screen as the other radios. Yes, you don't have to worry about getting it wet. Look at that. Plug and play. Super clean. Super easy. Okay, I was talking to Ronnie and I was talking to Brandon, and I decided, they said I shouldn't have to fight with it to fit and have a nice gap between the ignition switch and the radio. So I pulled the Rockford radio out of my personal 13 and down Street Glide, and they were right. On this bike, you have a lot more space. You see that? You have about a 1/4 inch gap between the radio and the ignition. So I guess there's something different about the fairing on that bike and that bike. I guess the rake's a little bit different, so I'm gonna go ahead and measure the angle of the fairing, but this one fits a lot better. Look how much space you have on the bottom. So if you have a base model, this bike only came with 2 speakers, guaranteed fitment, no issues, no fighting. Like, you have a ton of room. If one of the bikes is an Ultra, so it has a tour pack and rear speakers, so I'm assuming the rake of the fairing is a little bit different. I haven't figured it out yet, but it pushes the fairing closer here. But if you have this exact bike, it's gonna fit perfect, no fighting. And then this one's not even bolted in yet, so I didn't need Leo to help me. I literally just slid it in. I haven't put any bolts in it yet, and it goes all the way back. So just something to note. It fit on all 3 bikes, but this one was the absolute easiest. Now I haven't even bolted in yet, and I have a ton of space here. So the radio fits on all 3 trim level bikes, but on this one, it's 4 millimeters. So of course the radio slides all the way back, and then there's 4 millimeters extra between the radio face and the ignition knob. On that one, it's 8 millimeters. So there's like a millimeter space between the knob and the radio screen. And on that one, there is 6 millimeter. So you have like an extra 2 or 3 mil of space. Well, 2 millimeters of space. So super tight fit, loose fit. So it works on all 3. It's just going to take a little more work to get it on those. That one I was able to slide the radio in with no help and just bolt it in place. And you saw that we had a good amount of space in the screen. But great unit. I love it. Excellent job, Soundstream.